Texas for 3 weeks. It was wonderful. I did my annual, only one of them. I do a write-up for my newsletter, available for free at newsletter.cote.io. I've got to say, I think over the break, I lost a few subscribers. I was up to I think largely thanks to the Cloudcast bump, I was up to 880. I was thinking I'm just going to get to 900, but now I'm down to 876. And I know it's not because of the quality. It's top-notch quality. So I think
maybe people's New Year's resolution was, I've got too much Coté in my life.
My theory is that there were some people who read a little too much Cal Newport and they were trying to optimize their life. That's too far. They obviously didn't read the book far enough, which last page, number one thing, subscribe to Coté's newsletter.cote.io. Or maybe we're just seeing some of the unexpected negative effects of the RTO mandates, and people have lost their jobs, and I don't want to, insult my readers, but don't subscribe to a newsletter with your work email address. We know how volatile things are. It changes around. Don't use that. I even emailed out I found all the VMware people when we were shifting email addresses, and I was like, hey, you should not be using this address, but whatever. Anyhow, great write-up of the funny things you notice, as I'm sure you do, Matt Ray, when you've been away from America so long. You come back for 3 weeks. The favorite one, which is still, it should not be astonishing because it's going to happen, but you just don't realize the impact of it, is everyone is just so goddamn nice. They just they're smiling. They're asking how you're doing. The waiters are always talking to you. They're just so happy. And the sense you get now that I've been exposed to people who I think are happy, but they don't show it, Northern Europeans. Although, Dutch people, they kind of teeter. They're very weird in this, against the stereotype. But I think most of those Americans are actually pretty happy when they're smiling at you and asking how you're doing. It's kind of
Quick question, Coté. Is this a Texas thing, or do you feel like you experience this when you go to New York City, Boston?
I think it's a Texas thing.
I think it might be a Southern thing, right? Because you go to Atlanta and other places. I think maybe California. I think California might be a little bit in the middle, right?
A little bit mixed. What about Australia? Yeah. Australians always seem in pretty good mood to me. Matt, what do you think?
They're friendly. I feel like maybe they're friendlier. Ooh, I'm thinking about all the unfriendly.
Wow, man, that's really stumped you early.
Well, no, because out in the country, they're out in the rural areas. Obviously, in tourist places, they're going to be kind of friendly, but I think they mostly just kind of mind their own manner. They don't pay too much attention to folks. Obviously, in the tourist areas, and I kind of live in a touristy area, people are generally pretty friendly. And if you go places where they recognize you, oh yeah, they're super friendly. But
yeah. Well, there's three other things I noticed. I'll just go over two, and then the main thing I want to talk about was the fourth one. I didn't realize this, but American people love to say awesome and start sentences with honestly. That doesn't really happen in the rest of at least in my part of the world. No one's like, honestly, this is the best bread I've ever had. Or,
honestly, that's an awesome opinion.
Yeah, and they say awesome a lot, and also there's a bunch of style stuff, people wear whatever you want to call it, yoga pants all the time. They'll wear pajamas in public. Just, it's just crazy town there.
Yeah,
very casual dress. But the thing I wanted to ask, casual. Now you might know this, Matt Ray, because I feel like this is an area that you would not let slide like I have. But Brandon, I'm relying on you as the resident American.
Okay.
And I feel like there's been an explosion in eggnog. I didn't investigate this fully, but I was going through the HEB, of course, loving HEB. This is the other thing I realized. I have a niece who moved to Seattle, and within 45 seconds, her and I were talking about HEB. And it's you move a south, Waco and south of Texas person out of Texas, and they're just God damn, I miss HEB. It's there used to be this joke that you can tell an Austinite because they'll talk about how great Austin is, and I think you can tell if someone's from south of Waco by how fast they start talking about HEB. Those people up in Dallas, they're I don't get it, that's fine.
But I gotta know.
They should know. I had to talk with my brother-in-law. I had to be listen, you have HEBs up here now. You need to go. Stop going to Kroger. Kroger, valuable customer and friend of Tanzu, but go to HEB, right? Anyways, But the eggnog thing, I walk in there and there's like a whole shelf area of eggnog. And so like, what's going on, Brandon?
I can't report. I don't have any like direct knowledge other than like, you know, it kind of seeing it around the holidays, but I don't really drink any of it. But I think it's just like every American thing. It's like, well, there's just brand expansion, right? It's just like you can say the same thing with like Coca-Cola or Diet Coke. There's like, you know, a million of them. So to your point, whenever you go into the HEB, every aisle, right? There's like the original thing, ranch, like the other day I had to get the ranch dressing for the family. And it's like, and it was not obvious to me, like which one we buy. And it's like, you have to kind of go back to like, which is the original?
Hidden Valley, man.
Well, then, but then I was actually, funny enough, I got the wrong ranch. I'm supposed to get the ranch that's in the refrigerated section, not the beer section.
Ooh.
That's a whole other thing. So I don't know I don't think eggnog is unique in that, in the idea that there's been a lot of line extension.
Okay.
I think, yeah, I read somewhere that the average Australian grocery store has something like 80,000 items, and the average American one has 200,000. So
that makes sense.
That makes sense, right? I mean, everything, there's just a lot more choice. And, you know, when it comes to eggnog, it's like people are going to buy it. The real question is, can eggnog go year round, right? Is this going to
that was
break
my next
out
question
of its
is like,
seasonal, you know, handcuffs?
I need some reporting from other resident Americans. Are they selling eggnog year round? Because I feel like that would be viable.
That's when you're broken out. Yeah.
Pumpkin
spice lattes in July.
I have two more things
in April.
Two more things I want to go over from my list because I'm looking at it now. If you want to see the full list, you go to newsletter.cote.io. But one, I was, you know, all these things are the ambient things that if you live in America, you forget about. But like it's not super heavy as it used to be, but the kind of like presence of the Vietnam War is pretty strong in America compared to here. Like if you notice it, you'll see a bunch of old guys walking around with Vietnam War hats on, right? And I even overheard someone saying, when I was in Vietnam, when I was having a taco somewhere. So like that's something, I don't know, maybe the Dutch people are talking about when they were in Japan or something. I don't know what wars an unnamed war. But no one in Europe talks about World War II, so that doesn't come up. Maybe World War I. maybe you know what? Maybe there's a bunch of Napoleon talk that I'm missing. They might that might be something that comes up. But the second thing was I'm gonna enact a small play that happened between my daughter Alejandra and I. Alejandra says of America, they have big gardens. And I looked confused and I said, "Oh, you mean yards?" And she said, "Yes." So I'm not sure what's happening with my kids. They're using the word gardens, probably going in the lift up the hospital and to university and all that nonsense. Now, speaking of nonsense, there's been a lot of predictions that we've read. Actually, I haven't read that many predictions because I don't read them much. But I think Brandon, you surfaced one that was talking about Rust being perhaps a big deal, all sorts of other stuff. But the thing that I think the sort of reaction that it elicited, I think from you and me, is kind of not a prediction, but trying to account for like what happened to like DevSecOps and SBOMs and supply chain. Are those because I think 2 years ago that was a big prediction. And yeah. I can't really tell. Now, this might be your area of expertise nowadays, Matt Ray. But like, I don't really know what happened with that. And my theory, completely unfounded on anything except me thinking independently about it, is I think maybe it was just like an easy problem to solve, or maybe one that didn't so much exist. And there was also like federal policy about it. And then several years later, people were just like, what's new? And I don't know, it seems to have fizzled out.
Yeah, I think it was more of like a checkbox exercise where people were like, we need an SBOM. And you're like, okay, you go off, you do a bunch of work. You're like, here, the software bill of materials, right? So everything that's included in your software. And people did it. And then they're like, what are you going to do with that? And they're like, we got our SBOM, and you're like, and what are you going to do with it? And like, well, now when people ask us if we have one, we could say yes. Right. So, yeah. I mean, I think from the security angle, it definitely was kind of a worthwhile exercise of figuring out what's in your software. Um, and this, this kind of reminds me of people who are like, oh, Y2K was a big nothing burger. And it's like, it's actually because a lot of people put in a lot of work. And I feel like kind of the SBOM stuff might be kind of similar where they're like, oh, we did all this work and we don't have anything to show for it. It's like, well, actually, maybe now
Maybe
we know
it
what's in our
worked.
software. Maybe it worked, right? But I don't think there was kind of like, and then what? Right. And like, and then this is going to become the foundation for some reporting tool. It was really just like, do you have it? Because nobody had kind of, I don't know, like figured out what they're going to do with it. And there are a bunch of different standards of how that thing's formatted. I think the
Right.
Linux Foundation has one. I think, or the CNCF has one. I think there are a couple different ones. I think it's probably something that each large organization faces when they, maybe when they're getting like their cybersecurity insurance or, dealing with a security audit, they're like, do you have this? And it's just like a checkbox, right? So,
but interesting, like I was just double checking the history. Like I think the interest in these kind of crested around the SolarWinds kind of hack.
yeah. Because people didn't know what they had, right?
It was like 2020. So I guess the ultimate question is, I mean, one, it could like you said, and there was some legislation saying afterwards that all the federal agencies here in the United States had to have, or basically have something along those lines. And it's like, I guess though, like maybe the better question is like, did it not solve any problem for like internal development, right? Because that's when you'd see widespread adoption, where it was like, even if there was another need for it, was like, it is sometimes just nice to know, be like, it's sort of like, if you will, just having a well-maintained build system. It's also like, yeah, like what exactly, like what version are we using for everything? And like, let's keep this up to date because it actually makes our lives easier. Like, I don't know that I don't hear people talk about
interesting.
bombs that way, right? Like you hear about like, I'm building a container, I have a Docker file. But I don't know, Matt, do you like, maybe it is your world. Like, maybe it's just because it didn't like, if you will, like cross that area where it's like actually providing direct kind of, if you will, tangible benefits to the people doing the build system. It became like another artifact. Was that the failure of it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see people like doing more with it yet. I see people asking for them, and I see analysis of them, but I don't see people doing more with them, in my day to day much. So yeah, but I still think it was worthwhile.
Well, maybe like should it be, but is it the case that like the config management, as whatever state we want to say that industry is in, it's like that should just be the thing that's just creating it. It's just like, yeah, if I'm doing proper configuration management and proper CI/CD, like one of the artifacts should just quote unquote fall out would be an SBOM, right? Like,
yeah, no, that's how it's getting positioned, and then people are like, "What do we do with it?" And they're like, "And now you have an SBOM." You're like, well, what do I do with it? Like,
I wonder if they even have it. Do they even have? I guess that's an even better question. Is like, do people really have, like, maybe do they have systems that could create an SBOM and no one actually creates it unless like an auditor shows up?
That's the thing.
Somebody be like, yeah, we actually have it. It's updated.
No, I mean,
it's in GitHub.
There are definitely like when I was working on OpenCost, like we popped one out, right? It when we published a build, it's like, here it is, because somebody was asking for it. And what they did with it, I wasn't sure, but it was part of the Secure Software Supply Initiative or SSF or whatever it was. It was like, you need to publish this when you do it. And I guess if that way, somebody's like, oh, well, what happened, 8 versions back, what was in the software stack? Well, then they could go analyze that and look for like, oh, you need to fix everything, 6 versions back and later or what have you.
Right. So the annoying part is like there is the document, but the only person that reads it is an auditor. And the only time the auditor reads it is like when there's some type of audit. And then it's just annoying because the auditor's telling you to go back. You haven't had like a crisis. Whereas like you could flip it around as like, well, there was something else like proactively.
Well, but see, there probably are. I think there probably are consumers of it who have used it in anger. And I think it's just one of those things that hasn't really gotten a lot of mainstream usage yet. But if you have them, it could be useful. It's one of those things like, there's a lot of things around CI/CD and software development that are like good hygiene that oh, you would use it in this case, but like 80% of software shops never run into that case. But everyone's like, oh, you should totally do that, right? You should have, comprehensive tests for everything you do. And they're like, yeah, we really should, but you don't.
Yeah, well, this does kind of feel like it's falling in that category of like, renewing your access. A lot of times you have to go through that. Like you have to like assert that like someone so needs access. But like that seems to just be like a checkbox. Like I don't know. Like,
but it's
like I've asserted people needed access a million times, and I've also like requested it, and it's just like I don't know. It doesn't feel like anyone's like really looking at it too closely. It's just like,
but it's a hygiene thing, right? Like,
Yeah.
you could skip flossing a day or two, but if you don't floss for a year, it shows.
True.
Right.
True. Well, I don't know. It's probably a good prediction by this person. Then it's just like, hey, SBOMs like probably aren't going to be a dud. Or I mean, if the prediction says will be a dud, it's like maybe they already are, or maybe they're just boring. Maybe that's a prediction you can always make. This topic will be boring.
Yeah,
this topic will be boring.
To extract some reusable abstract ideas from what we were just talking about. I think there's at least two things that are interesting and usable there. One of them is like thinking about features, as you were saying, Matt Ray, is something a checkbox feature, right? It's like this thing that you need to implement, and that's it. And like in contrast, like a part of a checkbox feature, as you were saying, Brandon, is if we add this feature, does it have like day-to-day benefits for people in the system? That could be the developers, the people running it, or your actual customers, right? Is it something that benefits them? And if it doesn't benefit them day to day, then it kind of pushes it further into whatever quadrant we're thinking about here. And then finally, there's kind of like, and you talked about this initially, Matt Ray, but I want to call it like maybe like the CMDB problem, where it's like, who looks at this and what do they do with it, right? It's just like you can pop this stuff out and generate it, but like, who is this for? And are they doing anything with it? And like those three things are like, I guess usually these things fall into like the analogy that popped in my head is like, I feel like there must be some regulation in places that you need a fire extinguisher in the pantry in your kitchen nowadays. And just like, that never gets used.
Hopefully. But yeah,
but it'd be cool. It'd be cool to have if you needed it, I guess.
Exactly.
Right. But
I think it's definitely a checkbox feature. I mean, CSV export, that's a checkbox feature, right? You don't put out a press release saying you have it.
You're coming at
No.
Don't. Careful now.
But you need to have it.
Yeah.
Right. It's you don't put out a press release. You don't say like, 3.0 release now with CSV export. Right.
But I think people like,
but it's something you need to have.
I have to jump in on the CSV. It's like, because people want it. Like people really want it.
No,
Whereas
I know.
I don't think that many people like want the SBOM. They're just like, whatever.
They want it. They expect it to be there.
All right. Well, wait a minute. Here's another one. Then maybe we should. I want to apply all the thinking you've given to. It's like, and maybe this would be a good prediction for. We can make it. I guess here. It's like passkeys, which I like. I personally like it, and I think it should. I want to see it adopted, but I feel like it's going this route of like, no, it's good. Like it could just become a checkbox thing. It's like, do you support passkeys? Yeah, but no one uses them, and normal people are just do not understand them and do not want to give up the password, which saddens me. I feel like that's where we're headed now.
Yeah. I feel like it's a UX issue. Because even I'm kind of baffled by passkeys, but we have this thing, like we use Okta at work, and they have this thing Okta FastPass, and basically I just like scan my fingerprint when I want to log into most things,
right?
And that's what I thought a passkey would be like, but instead it's like the Apple thing pops up, but I actually want to use the 1Password thing, and then sometimes it works in Google, and there's one time it worked on my phone automatically. And so it just seems like there's some UI issue.
Yeah, so people just don't. They just don't get it.
Yeah. Like I feel like the point of the passkey should be like, now I don't need to use a password, which feels like no. Or now I don't need to do some extra steps to authenticate myself.
I mean,
go ahead, Matt.
I think about passkeys the same way I think about like. 1Password generated passwords. Like, I don't know that password. I've never seen that password. It's unique to that website. And it just
right.
gets filled by the tool, and that's how I feel.
No,
is
no,
opacity's different from that.
That
to me,
part's
that's
cool.
the same thing.
It's just like I can never. It's like every time to metaphorize, and again, it's like whenever I need to use a passkey, it's like I have to fumble around in my pockets to find the key, and then I've lost track of where the lock is, and I can't like get these things together. And so I feel like it just must be
it's
a
just the
UX
fingerprint
issue.
reader.
I don't know. I like it. So keep it up.
Yeah,
Keep
but I
trying.
mean,
I'm
am
gonna
I
keep
thinking
trying
about it the
passkey
wrong
people.
way?
No, I mean, I mean, obviously there are some very technical differences in sense it's like using encryption,
But the UX is the same.
But it is from the perspective of like, if you're using something like 1Password, it's just, oh, even better. It just sort of like does all this behind the scenes for me. And it's basically doing this in a nice, safe, cryptographic manner. So that's why it's good. But like, I don't know, regular people are just completely baffled by it. They just like, it's just totally confusing to them.
It's probably like all things. If I use Chrome instead of Safari, it'd probably work fine. I think that's.
Man.
Well, there's another. I think there was a fun interview with the CEO of Harness on the new stack, and they've come up a lot recently in my little world over the past year or so, and I hadn't really looked at them very much, so it was fun to do so and then talk about it. So I think looking at it, what Harness is doing is it's kind of like trying to be, once again, the everything platform for your software development stuff. Now, I think it's coming at the same space that like a GitLabs is at, without starting from the version control angle, and instead they come at it more from a, for lack of a better phrase, well, I don't know, like maybe it kind of starts with like build pipelines, and then you add this on, and next thing you know, you've got an internal developer platform or a platform, and then they have this little company that does feature flag stuff, so forth and so on, right? And all of that said, they've got a fantastic web page. If you go look at their homepage, if that's what people still say, if as I'm sure my two co-hosts have done, and many people listening to this, if you've ever worked on the corporate web page, you'll probably look at this web page and be like, they finally did it, right? Someone finally just made the web page that we all said we needed, but for some reason we didn't end up with, right? And in that case, you look at this web page, and despite my kind of rambling overview of it, you're like, oh, I know what this thing does. I know who it's for, and here's what it actually looks like. And then at the only thing I would ding them on is you have to look really hard to find their blog. It's like hidden way down at the bottom of the page, which is fine. That's, if back in our exegesis podcast, we would talk for 10 minutes about how the non-visibility of the blog link was indicative of the way they thought about the blog and marketing and things like that. You can do a lot of good exegesizing if you go look at their 2 webinar pages in their resources tab. It's very interesting. You'll love this, Brandon, in the resources tab. And if you're familiar with this, the resources tab is where you list all of your PDFs, your webinars, your customer cases, these things that don't really fit on a blog or their own page that people will want to look at. But one of the filters that you can apply, you can see only the webinars, you can see the annual reports. Here's the one you'll love, Brandon. You can also see collateral. I think,
nice.
like when I'm the SVP of build pipelines, I'm really looking for some collateral.
That was nice for the salesperson or the product marketers. Like, okay,
I like it when they actually just have like branding, where they're like, here's how you can use our brand.
They also, and this is not about them, because everyone does this. They also list infographics, and every time I see that, I think like, does anyone actually want to see an infographic? I feel like whenever an infographic is used, it's almost like it's either you're tricking someone into not knowing they're seeing an infographic in order to get a message across, or it's like the equivalent of like marketing, like being in a trench coat and like exposing itself to you and running away. It's just like, no one wants to see an infographic, but the marketing people are very happy to make one and show it to you. I guess what I'm saying is, don't do infographics.
Don't do that. Well, I do think the one thing that caught my attention about this was, I guess, the headline, right? It was startups within startups. And I'll just like to summarize that, it was just what you said, Coté. They have this nice long pipeline that you can build, and then the pitch is that like each one of the things kind of inside that, you know, part of the pipeline is like its own startup within Harness, right? Or it's like, you know, some like its own little, if you will, atomic feature that can like, you know, go at its own pace. And I think anytime, this is like one of these phrases I see, it's like, oh, you know, we want to act like a startup, or we want to be startups within startups. I'm always like, that's definitely not going to happen. That will definitely not work. So that's why I guess when I look at this stuff, I'm always like, I don't know. I mean, the pitch is sort of like a modernized DevOps pipeline. And then the pitch is sort of like, and we're going to have like very agile startup type components inside of it. And then with the user benefit being less developer toll, which is your kind of thing, Coté. And it's just like, I don't know. Every time I see this pitch, I'm always like, I think maybe they could be adding more developer toll. Like, I think it's sometimes I always feel like the opposite is actually happening. And also this idea, like, I just have like an allergic reaction to like any executive saying like each one of these teams is its own startup. I'm like, no, you're 100%. I just, having seen that and experienced that, I believe that doesn't exist. I don't know, Matt, am I wrong? Am I wrong in saying all that?
It definitely can add more entertainment to development. Everybody's a different startup, and like this startup's a holacracy. This startup is.
Did you say holacracy? Is that a word?
The flat. What do they call the one?
Oh, hallow. I don't know how to pronounce that.
Yeah,
a flat organizational structure, if you will.
Yeah. I just like I like the idea of it being just, you know, each room is a different insane asylum.
Yeah, you know, like that is I didn't notice that part, but I'll have to think about it. But I think the part that I guess I did, because the part that you do notice is kind of like the like when you look at GitLab, you have this sense that it's like a whole bunch of different projects kind of like sewn together. Now, I come from a company that markets the opposite of that we're an integrated, we don't say opinionated anymore, but we're an integrated stack of stuff built together, right? And so like I'm familiar with both ends of the spectrum. And I think it's indicative is a weird word, but I think it represents a problem in this space of like developer tooling and platforms and whatever, is that like customers for worse want that. like they want the thing that the Docker people used to say, the batteries included but replaceable or whatever, right? They want to know that something's customizable. So, you know, that sentiment that we're a bunch of little startups that integrate together, it plays well for that. Like, you can customize this to however you want. You can swap things in and out. And indeed, you know, there's going back to the, you know, the English professor analysis of something rather than just using it firsthand or studying it. Like if you look at their webpage, there's all sorts of things where they'll have like these flashing hexagrams of different things you can integrate it with, right? So there's very much the sense that you can fit in whatever you want. And I mean, I'm biased from years of being at Pivotal and now Tanzu and stuff, but like that feels like a bad path. Like to go down the path of like, now, if you were to take now, and what I'm saying to be clear is like, if you were to take the complete harness thing, batteries included, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like, all right, harness has, I'm estimating this, 15 or so components, right?
Right.
And if it would be the VP of sales dream, if every customer just paid for all of those components. Like there's a great case where they're like, Citibank has 10,000 developers doing something with us. And just like excellent case study. So it's one thing if you take those 15 or so components as meant to work together, but then over the course of a 3 to 5 year period, if you only take 3 of those components and like a third of 4 other components and then integrate your own components in, just like you've got this Frankenstein stack of weirdness.
Yeah. I'm sure their customer success people are heavily driven to like push out anything else. You know, they're like, these are our 15.
Right.
I think when we did GitLab, we made fun of them having 9 pillars. 8 pillars,
Yeah.
and then now that we're up to 15. I mean, so I'm sure that they're like, okay, you know, you're going to drive adoption of these things, and if there's something that's not in our stack, oh, we maintain these integrations, but you know, push them towards this. You know, push them, you know, away from GitLab towards GitHub, who are they're both kind of competitive, right? So everybody's kind of competitive now, but I mean, there are definitely advantages to be had if it's one seamless integrated stack, but you're
I
fighting
think
a
also the
lot.
messaging to me is where like I think this the CEO messaging I think is just off here. It's like I would never lead with startups. Like you could say something along like, "Hey, we've built out a modernized DevOps stack. We have solutions across the thing. We think they all work well together. You should buy it. Here's an ELA. I'll try to make it convenient for you." And then if someone says, "But like I really want to replace, I need to use this testing framework," then you say, "Well, actually, it is pluggable." Right. This is where you kind of do it. It's pluggable. You can put it in here. We've tested with that. You know, we obviously have our own, but you can do that. But it just seems like this idea, like this whole thing, like the whole pitch of like this article to me was like he was sort of that the CEO I took to me and it was like this was really an advantage because I'm like I already have that advantage. If I want, I'll just go get Jenkins and just start plugging in whatever I want. Like I don't really need some help doing that. And then I guess my biggest takeaway on Coté, you really reminded me of this in some of your notes. So this is sort of me stealing a little bit of your point, but like the entire reason this company exists, I think, is because App Dynamics was sold too soon, right? That's the other like thing. Like when you get to like the founding story, right? Because wasn't it the story that this was basically the App Dynamics was going to go public, and then it was bought by Cisco like right at the end, and most of the people involved in executive level started Harness. And
we probably talked about it at the time.
Yeah, I'm sure we did. And it just seems like, I mean, this is not it's fine to like go start another company and make more money. I'm not against it, but it's just sort of like when you look within this, it's like, oh, that's what's really happening here. It's like, oh, darn it, we sold App Dynamics too soon. And Harness is our chance to like make more money. And we're kind of just doing the same stuff that's been seen everywhere. But they're doing it well with a really beautiful webpage. I'm sure the products are good, but the positioning seems a little off to me. I don't know. What do you think, Coté? Did I steal your point? Do you agree with that?
No. I mean, I think, yeah, I mean, it is to add more to that. There's clearly a passion if you're doing like your third or fourth startup through things. Cause I think also, cause I think I didn't do the full lineage, but of course, like before App Dynamics, there was Wiley, which who was it? CA or H?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Maybe there's some Wiley running around in my my corporate backyard. Then I should go look that up. But yeah, I mean, there is a serial entrepreneur thing, and you know, there's a bigger point there of I guess you know we have speaking of App Dynamics and Wiley, we have the joke that like monitoring gets reinvented every time there's an exit, right? As the Wiley App Dynamics going into like all the other things, like you just instead of fixing what already exists, you just invent a new thing, and that's the way things go. And I guess initially I had some snarky frustration about like, you know, Cruise Control came out in 2001, which is, did I do the math? 24 years ago, almost a quarter of a century ago, and we still haven't like going back to SBOMs. We still haven't like made this category boring, right? Like it's still like there's still like startups every couple of years who are like, this is a terrible problem. It's not solved, and I don't think they're wrong from talking with people, but it's just like it
just doesn't seem like a money-making opportunity.
Well, the revenue there, I think is interesting. I guess we could compare two things. So based on your homework here, it says IDC estimated that they made 86.7 million in 2023. So really good, but it's obviously still pretty small in comparison to this. So I think GitLab, right, which is now public, right, and they're sort of on the other end trying to, at least the thing I read last was like trying to sell themselves. So I think they're making, you know, a lot more. So it's just sort of like maybe they're just running this kind of revenue. You kind of get to a certain amount of revenue and it just becomes hard to grow and you need to sell out. And so in this case, the Harness CEO is like, okay, we're not going to sell like we did before App Dynamics. We're going to ride this to the next IPO and then try to get bought out in the Datadog level is kind of like the bet here. And it's not so much like anything has changed. It was just sort of like, oh, we're just at a cycle where like we have smart people. We know how to solve this problem. Let's try to spin the wheel one more time and see if we can make 10x what we made on AppD.
Yeah. I, you know, to add the add the bread part to the shit sandwich right there. Like I think I think how my theory would be that like this market is reinvented every 5 or 10 years, and when that window opens up, it's beneficial for several people to go in and try to solve it, so we get incrementally better at it, right?
Yeah,
like,
and just to fact check myself, so the GitLab revenue last year was 579, so 579 million. So there you go. So you can say what?
yeah. I mean, like, you know, it's not like instead of going and fixing rational, let's just do a new startup.
Yeah,
right? And like which is probably fine. I mean, the way that we've seen companies run R&D and product inside of aging things, they basically just like milk it instead of developing it. So that motivates the creation of new startups to do things. And like I said, it looks impressive. Good job on the webpage.
It's a good website. Good job.
I want to,
webpage.
and also from talking with people who talk with them, it seems perfectly fine. Seems interesting. They, like I said, they come up a lot. So good job there. Now I want to ask, as I did last time, I want to ask a general question. I think you two have more product experience in this than I do, but let's go back to that Voltron-y like aggregate sum of parts thing. Like in your experience from like a business of software, infrastructure software perspective, does that strategy like usually work better to have like, we've got a bunch of little components. I went and counted them, and I think there's, I mean, who knows if at the bottom of the pages, the components are actually different functionality for the same product, but whatever. They list 18 different functional points that they have, right? And so like in your, like Wiz is a little bit like this too, right? But like you've got a whole bunch of different things that you bring together into a portfolio, right? And so the question there, now, I think that can work or not work. It's really just kind of like a state of mind to some extent. But the question that I had is more like, does this idea, if you have that model, does this work, this idea of account expansion work? Or is that just like a fantasy? And you alluded to this earlier, Matt Ray, where you're like, all right, so let's say, you know, they bought this company Split.io and they have feature flags, right? So let's say you're a feature flag customer. Is it valid to think that you'll end up buying more of these harness things? And then conversely, let's say you just buy harness for the build automation. Like, do you think it's like viable that they'll expand, that your customers will expand out into other things, or are they always going to stick with that one component that they're using?
Well, that's the bet when you made the acquisition, right?
Absolutely.
You think you have something that you can make compelling to your existing user base to expand. And I mean, I'm not in the market for this, so maybe I'm not the right person for it, but how big a market could a feature flag company have had by itself?
Right. I mean,
limited, right.
I think more of what I'm asking you about is, let's call it bi-directional expansion. Like, I think to use a phrase from my past that I know Brandon loves, you know, you can have tuck-in acquisitions, right? Yeah. And I would expect in this case, I'm trying to generalize because I don't know enough about harness to specificize, but like, let's say you buy a feature flag company, and that's more of like functionality you're adding to your existing stuff, not something that you're hoping to like get their customers to buy your stuff, right?
Right.
However, in larger suites over time, you do have this notion of like, oh, we have all these customers who buy, we've got a 5-part suite, and we have a lot of customers who buy one of those parts. Mm-hmm. And all we've got to do, this is at your sales kickoff, after you've had the athlete or the retired coach come to pump you up. And they're like, listen, all we've got to do this year is have all of our customers buy 5% of widget C.
No, buy feature flags. That's what you got to say. So all we got to do this year is, but I think to answer your question, I think it's a little bit more subtle. It's sort of like the buyers for those. I mean, what large companies want, they would like to buy ELAs, right? Or like, you know, if you will, one size, the enterprise subscription. So the more you can put in there, the executive and finance people that you're negotiating with will often see that as the default way to just like, why don't we just do this? And the if you will, the competitive advantage a large company has is they have the large sales force, they have the relationships, they have the contractual relationships. So the hope is, like, I think when people buy these things that they're buying, if you will, ideally they're buying the thing that's like really popular and people are already using. And so it's just like, oh, thank goodness. It just comes with my subscription now.
Thank goodness it's part of my existing trusted
so
vendor
that's the
relationship.
ideal situation. Probably the more reality situation is that they looked at that thing and that thing is like, whoa, they want $2 billion for this. Why don't we spend $100 million on the third place competitor that's just as good? Because when they did their M&A analysis, like all the check boxes were like almost the same, at least on a slide. And like, we'll just buy that and we'll buy that and we'll just sell that. And then that's like typically very mixed results. Sometimes that's where like the end users either are, you know, frustrated. They're like, why are we using Amazon Chime? I wanted to use Zoom. You know, it's like that kind of feeling, right? Or, you know, there's millions.
Hello, Teams.
There's like, you can take shots at anything, right? Just like a million of these things, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, like how it works out is always very mixed. So, and that's why I don't like the startups within startups. It's like, obviously all of these products are not equally good inside of Harness, right? Like it's just not possible. They're not
right.
Probably, like, I don't know Harness well enough, but I bet you if we surveyed the software defined talk surveys, people would be like, this is great. This thing, this module, awesome.
Yep.
And then they'll be like, I'm forced to use this thing and I actively hate it and I'm trying to replace it and I've already built something better, right? And that's mostly how suites go.
Yeah, I guess you can't do a kind of like gun to head binary either way on this, because there are examples of things going both ways. So like one, like in the application space, you have Microsoft, which obviously use our other products because you already have most of our other products.
Right, Teams.
That
That's
works,
a good example, right? Use Teams instead of Zoom. It's good enough, right? And
on the other hand, but then in contrast, you have Slack and Zoom. Like Zoom has all this wacky stuff in it, like docs, and like, you know, you intuitively know that's just not going to work,
right?
Like no one's going to be like, and you saw Dropbox try to do this with Paper, et cetera, and so forth, right? And then also like with Slack, I don't know if it ever goes beyond just Slack, right? So I don't know what the conditions were and the setup on the board for that. And then over in infrastructure land, like I've never actually been inside of this, but my understanding is like account expansion is a lot of what makes Red Hat successful, because they just have like everything. And so like you've already got Linux and it already has this and it already has that. So you should just use that by default, right? Plus all sorts of other things that make it easy to use. But then I would theorize like maybe someone like Oracle, like do you use all of their stuff if you use the database, or do you not? Like where do things fall on? So there must be more like, instead of saying it works or doesn't work, there must be a way of applying it that either works or doesn't work.
I mean, I kind of get the feeling it probably works if you have kind of the super heavy anchor that like isn't going away. You know, Red Hat Linux not going away, Oracle database not going away. And you know, going and trying to sell additional stuff after that, you know, salespeople got to earn their money, but you know, the Oracle license itself is not going away. And so learning how to sell and expand that works well. But I think the problem, you know, maybe the problem for somebody like a Harness is like, if you don't have the anchor, you're, you know, 15 cats in a bag and, you know, trying to strap them all together and, you know, sell them as a unified thing is like, well, what is the one thing that I get? And, you know, it's CI/CD, but is that a strong enough anchor to tie everything to? I guess for GitLab, it probably still was source control, you know, being the GitHub alternative was their anchor. And maybe you gotta have some like thing that you could just plant in the ground and build everything around it. And
maybe Atlassian is another example, right? Because they had a big anchor of Confluence and Jira, I think. Like
Jira,
and then you know they had their own build thing, their own Slack thing. So they went through several years where they were trying to expand into other things that you would do, and I guess I could go look it up, but I don't know.
Yeah, but then they sold that off. So I think, and I think, you know, so I think it's never like, does it work or does it not? It's sort of like, it's just, if you will, if you think about like just the market, it's like all of these products have strengths and weaknesses. Sometimes if you have a strong anchor and kind of like, you just need something in another area and it's not that good, but you just kind of need it. Like you need an SBOM report. Someone's like, let's go get that. Right. And then other times, so there's like, I think PagerDuty is a good example. Like almost every company that we talk about has built-in notifications, but PagerDuty continues to live on because it just has a group of people that are passionate about using it, and it just has solved the problem in a way that other places just can't, if you will, displace it. And it's just like you're always kind of stuck between those two ideas.
And probably, shout out to PagerDuty, like they've got a high quality product that the pricing probably isn't onerous enough where people are like, God, that PagerDuty bill, I'm tired of paying that. It's probably, kind of they've found their sweet spot of we do this better than everybody. And nobody thinks
your point, pricing, and they're just obsessed over just that. Whereas like notifications is always like the add-on thing and another product, right? And it's right. I need to do escalation 3 levels and have this thing. People are like, really? That's kind of hard.
I'm not gonna do that in my monitoring platform.
We don't have time for that. And people are like, no, we need it. Well, and that's why I use PagerDuty, because PagerDuty has like this infinite amount of like things that you can do. Whereas when you're the product manager and you're like, I don't know, why don't we just send email to one person? And if they want, they can add a list of a group email alias.
Yeah,
right?
It's a webhook. Knock yourself out.
And the customers are like, we're not doing that. Can you just integrate with PagerDuty? You're like, okay, I'll just give you that.
Yeah.
Right. I'm like, I'm not going to build out, because you look at PagerDuty, you're like, we could build this. And then you're like, no, just the calendaring stuff of like the on-call calendar. It's going to take us 7 months to do that. And it's going to be wrong. So let's just integrate with PagerDuty.
And customers will be like, it's not as good as PagerDuty.
Exactly.
Call up your alliances person. Have them go have a meeting to integrate. Well, so the last thing I want to go over. So I listened to we got a new in the U.S. new regime coming in, a presidency, and I think as we get closer to that, I've been trying to I don't know if trying is the right word. I'm trying to figure out like these tech people. I don't know how many there are, but the prominent tech people who support like the Trump world. I'm trying to figure out what's up with their lunacy. And now I've
shown your cards early, Coté.
I've kind of biased my stuff there, but like
Coté, I don't know.
Or to put it in a more unbiased way, I'm trying to figure out what I have wrong and if I need to revise my priors. I think it was that rationalist talk. Someone will have to write it to see if I've done it well. I've listened to enough years of Tyler Cohen and read enough Astral Star Codex to like know how to talk rational. So I think I can do it. And there was a hour and 45-minute interview with Mark Andreessen. I forget who it was interviewed by, but I thought it was a great touch point in this research. And so I want to spend some more. I might even go back and re-listen to it because I was thinking about it before recording here, and I didn't have extensive enough footnotes on my opinions to back it up. But I did some further research this evening, and I want to do a preliminary readout on what's up with the tech bros, the Trump tech bros. We need a better name for it, but I'm gonna use that for now. And I think this is documented starting in the summer. Ben Thompson had as always, a great interview when Andreessen Horowitz came out supporting Trump. I think we were all like, what's going on here? And the framing that he had that was synthesized through him was that there was this kind of like broken promise between the Democrats and Silicon Valley. And going back, and I should re-listen to that interview. It's not that I have time for any of this, but like I think the framing there was like we in Silicon Valley were supposed to have light regulations so that we could go out and make a lot of money and innovate, and that would help people out. And then there was this very weird, this is the thing about studying this stuff, is you notice these patterns of very strange things that they mention over and over again. And they were very upset that people weren't happy with their philanthropy, giving money to charity. So that came up as an issue, which, like, is that an issue? I think if someone's telling a rich person they're upset about their philanthropy, the software-defined talk, charity is always willing to listen, and we would be happy to benefit from the largesse of capitalism and your improvement for civilization.
We're not a nonprofit, but it's close to it.
If someone wants to donate a few $1 million, I think Brandon can do the paperwork, and we can. Is it a 501c or something? We can. I mean, if OpenAI can be a nonprofit, certainly we can. I think it would be fine. So that's kind of like a small thing. But then you listen to this interview, and I apologize that we'll put a link to it in the show notes at softwaredefinedtalk.com/501. Sadly, not sponsored by the Levi Strauss Corporation, but you can find a link to it there. But I think what's starting to happen in this discussion is as we get closer to like, you know, Trump land, I think these people are like, as we used to say, saying the quiet part out loud a lot more. And I think they have a lot of like, one, they've just turned into like classic traditional Republicans that we grew up with, who are just like, you know, they want lower taxes and less regulation. Like, what could be more Republican than lower taxes and less regulation? And, you know, sure, if you're in the business of business, right on, right? Like that's what's on your plate right there. And I think someone else who works at Andreessen Horowitz, I forget his name, he kind of wrote up this as well. And I think there was this theory that, or it wouldn't be theory because he was one of the VCs, that they're getting into more and more software, less software things to the physical world where you encounter
more regulation. Yeah.
Right. Because you're actually like fucking around with the world, not just like, you know, showing pictures of sandwiches on cats' heads and bullshit like that. So like, I think most pertinently, another thing that comes up over and over again is basically crypto, and just like this, like they're so upset at Elizabeth Warren and the SEC, and I haven't done the research. Obviously, I think if you were to listen to the archives, I think all three of us, maybe not Matt Ray Diallo if he's diversified his portfolio, but I think all of us are basically like, I'm pretty sure crypto is just a big scam. And
I'm a cheerleader for that viewpoint.
And so one, you've got that, it's a big scam. And then two, if you also think about it, well, it's like you're trying to make an alternative currency system, and that's not great, right? Like, of course the government's going to want to shut that down.
Can we have something completely unregulated that no one's responsible for? It can't track. It's like, what government would love that? Right.
And so what you'll hear in this interview, and I'll, you know, is the next step in this lunacy is we're being regulated too much, and that's slowing down innovation or building, as Mark Andreessen wrote a couple years ago. And this is like slowing the progress of civilization, because it used to be that we were using capitalism to have people innovate and do things. And now, because we can't do crypto, things are bad. Whereas, like, you know, my more pragmatic take is like, why don't you just go talk to Swift over in Belgium and use the IBAN system, and that'll solve most all of your problems, right? like sure, that has to do with regulation, but we don't need to invent a whole new currency system and global like banking system. You could just, it works in Europe fine. But, you know,
I think
anyways.
to summarize, I think what you kind of hit on, and it does seem to be like, and I think Ben Thompson like has laid this out, so kind of repeating, it sort of comes down to, you know, if you will, if you take Ben Thompson's premise, sort of like the belief was at one point was sort of like liberal politicians sort of left tech to like do its own thing, and it created a lot of economic growth. People were all happy, and there was minimal oversight and regulation. Now that has changed, right? There's a lot more regulation or oversight. And, you know, there's a segment of technical, you know, let's say call them soft or whatever, just technical technology executives and VCs that are frustrated by that. And that seems to be kind of like, at the moment, that seems to be where we're at. And so that's sort of like, it's kind of swung to like what feels like we're going into a much lower environment. And that's what people want. And then whether it's crypto or, you know, it's just sort of like, I think that's the side that they're kind of portraying is like all of these regulations are slowing us down, whereas the other side, kind of, I think the side you're on today is like, hey, like we should be careful at looking at some of these things. And also there is a profit motive. Like maybe there's some simpler ways, lower risk ways to solve, like, you know, the ability to send currencies around the world that don't involve, if you will, rethinking all of it.
Right. I realize it's a relatively small thing, but like, boy, USB-C, that worked. Right? Like a couple years later, I think we're all in agreement that like, whoo, that was wonderful, right? Like, thank you, EU, right?
Right.
And now this is I think the where things have evolved, where it's different than the summer. If you listen to this, is like, this is what I want to go back and listen to. But I think they finally they unlocked the section of their library called like the Ayn Rand section, because they talked about
They went back to it.
Yeah, they talked about Gulls Island and all of that stuff just extensively. They're having lots of fun, and I if this is again what I want to re-listen to, but I think the whole summary was like, yeah, there was all the smart people, and they were tired of being held back by the dumb people. We should do that. What's implied in that is that like we are a group of small, not small as in stature, but a small group of very smart people, and everyone else is dumb, and they should suck it up. And do what we think is smart. We're being held back by all the dumb people or the misinformed people.
Right. That's
the people who wouldn't want to be one of the smart people.
The people who don't revisit their priors.
Right, and I believe that's the those are known as the industrialists.
Yes, the industrialists.
That's the Ayn Rand, and it's like, yeah, well, if the industrialists left, we're all like screwed. But as you and I, Coté, talked about, it's like, no, actually, if they left, it'd be great because then we could do the jobs and we could get the money. But anyway, I always feel like that's like the last chapter of the book that's like not read. It's like, oh, look at all these people left. Now we can do it. So
yeah. I mean that's to rephrase it. One of the flaws in, as you say, industrialist thinking is like they obviously haven't asked enough of the so-called dumb people if they'd like to have their job. And I think maybe those surveys would be good. So, and I think finally, this is the thing I need to do more research on is like, I feel like either they genuinely are like on the right side of culture wars, like they're very concerned about who uses what bathroom, or they're doing that Reagan thing where they're latching on to culture wars as a tool,
absolutely,
to do things. Either way, it's like kind of repugnant.
I mean, Peter Thiel is Exhibit A, right? He's a gay man voting for all that stuff, and it's like they're going to turn on you eventually. The leopards are going to eat your face.
Yeah. Anyways, it's like I'll have to do some more studying. Maybe I'll report back. But it is a of course, in none of this conversation, the thing that doesn't come up is like, I mean, did they inject bleach into them when it was COVID time? I think you're going for a pretty unstable solution to
but it's an unstable world. So what are you going to do?
That's right. Well, speaking of unstable worlds and gigantic lumbering regulations, sort of structures that you're forced to go through, things that you would rather just eliminate, but that actually, if you take a close look at it, is incredibly valuable and a cherished part of the tradition, the legacy, the very fabric of the culture of something that happens weekly. Do we have any bureaucracy this week, Brandon?
Well, we do. We've had a couple things I wanted to mention. One, I guess, we've had a great run with the thread, but I got the official message in the Software Defined Talk Slack. So it says 131,000 messages. Now, they're not all the thread. So there's, I guess, 131,000 messages and files older than a year will be permanently deleted on January 28th if we don't upgrade our Slack. We're not upgrading the Slack. I wish we could. We have no money for that. Maybe if someone at Slack wants to just, allow us freeloaders like access to the pro, they can turn it on. Otherwise, we're going to start losing some of Matt Ray's precious messages inside. So, but we did have one listener did a great job. They somehow downloaded all the messages from the thread, and they made it a podcast using the Google technology. So we have that. I don't know what we're going to do with it. I sort of am threatening to release it because I think it's not bad, but then it's like I can't really I feel like I don't want to put it out here because everyone would be like, "What are you doing? That's crazy." But we have it. So we have some type of archive of it, nonetheless. So it's
kind of like when I downloaded all my Twitter posts. And
yeah, you just never know. Maybe we need it. We have it.
No,
so,
it's like an SBOM. You're just like, I have it.
Yeah,
well done.
Is anyone going to use it?
Probably not. But we have it. Yeah. So, but don't worry. But don't worry. The Slack's still working. It's just some of the messages are going away, and it's probably good. There's probably a bunch of nonsense in there as well. Also, as starting the new year, we'll kick off with you should definitely get your Software Defined Talk sticker for your new laptop, for your sales kickoff, for your mug, your tumbler, whatever it is. And to do that, all you have to do is email your postal address to stickers@softwaredefinedtalk.com. Happy to send you a sticker anywhere in the world. And if in the new year you're looking for a job, you should join the Slack, join the jobs channel. Eric is definitely hiring. He's hiring a software engineer for, I believe it's called Dagster Labs. And if I said that wrong, I apologize. But there's some other jobs in there as well. So if you're looking for a job, check it out. Usually the people that post them will tell you more about it, give you the back channel, right, Coté? That's what you need, the back channel before you
Back channel.
go into the job interview. They can tell you if it's a good job or why you should do it. So check all of those things out.
I think also in that area, I think longtime listener of the podcast, Jordy, mentioned that he's available for work in the product marketing, whatever area, product / any, that kind of stuff area. So if you're interested, you should check that out. And also, I mentioned this earlier. If someone is unsatisfied with the reception they're getting with their philanthropy, maybe you could sponsor our Slack channel where you can push forward the progress of civilization and capitalism from a technological basis and get lots of gratitude for it.
Yep.
It would be wonderful. Now, there's several conferences. There's Configuration Management Camp coming up February 2nd and 5th. I'll be speaking there. There's also Civio Navigate North America in San Francisco, February 10th to 11th. These are all in 2025, by the way. And of course, DevOps Days LA and Scale 22X on March 6th to 9th. You can use the discount code DevOps to get some kind of discount, which is better than no kind of discount. And speaking of things that are better than nothing, what's your recommendation this episode, Matt Ray?
Well, what's funny is all this talk about the bright shining future. I think this might be a repost recommendation. I'm going to Tasmania for a few days for a quick family vacation, and there's an Australian show called Rosehaven that we've been rewatching to get us in the mindset of Tasmania. It's about a guy who goes back to help his family business because he couldn't hack it on the mainland. So hacking it on the mainland, maybe that's a theme for 2025. Maybe just take some time to revisit the more enjoyable, quiet things.
Hacking it on the mainland. How about yourself, Matt? You're not Matt Ray. You're Brandon.
What do you have to
recommend?
I am definitely Brandon, not Matt Ray. I thought I would just do a quick follow-up. I think I recommended these, but I wanted to. I gave my son a pair of the Ray-Ban Meta glasses for Christmas, and
yes,
and he liked them. I think he did. I used them several times. And a quick recap is they're pretty simple. Just kind of look like Ray-Bans, and they, if you will, play music through bone induction. So that's really good in the sense of like if you feel like your teen is maybe like always like has AirPods in, they can't hear you. Well, it's nice now they can hear you when you're talking to them, even if they're hearing something.
Are they glasses or sunglasses?
They're sunglasses. These are sunglasses. Okay. And then the other thing is they take videos. So he was actually, funny enough, he used it for a school project. He had to take a little video, and it was actually quite easy to, if you will, just take it with the sunglasses, right? So I don't know, wasn't too expensive. It certainly wasn't like an Apple, what is it? The Vision Pro. It was not like a $3,000 thing. So it's kind of like a fun gift. He seems to enjoy them. So I don't know if you're looking for a gift. I put them on. I think they're pretty cool. I mean, the one thing I took away from it was like, oh yeah, Apple should definitely be making this, and I will probably buy the Apple version of these when they come out. So really to wear them, it's just like, do you like Ray-Bans? That's it. Do you like that style of sunglasses? Otherwise, it's just, they're pretty simple. So I don't know if you have a teen or you're just someone likes gadgets. I think it's a pretty fun one. Check it out.
I like the idea that your son is going to become like going to wear sunglasses all the time and be like the Anna Wintour, Karl Lagerfeller, like Joan Didion of his school. He's just constantly wearing them.
Yeah, so I do. Again, more sympathy for the teachers. Like, not him specifically, but like, I don't know. It's like between cell phones, Apple Watches, and now just glasses. It's just like, I don't know. If you're teaching a room full of teenagers in high school, there's a lot of technology.
It's already hard.
I mean, it's going to be harder. So
that's rough. Luck. Well, my recommendation is I probably recommended it before, but over the past month, I went through my annual phase where I thought I would use Obsidian, so I spent a lot of time doing that, and then of course I just went back to Apple Notes after reading this post I'll link to, where someone just explained how they use the whole Apple tool chain for productivity, and there's not really anything revelatory in it except just a reminder that it's okay. You don't have to like spin up a whole. If you don't want to, you don't have to spin up a whole Notion system or do this.
The defaults are fine. Yeah.
And over the past year, the big thing this person goes over is how to do. I've done this. It's not great, but how you can get away with doing Kanban boards in reminders, which is fine. So there's been a bunch of updates and things to Apple Notes. It still suffers from the major thing that you can actually buy a third-party thing called Exported that is great, that will export your Apple Notes directly to Markdown. But by default, you have to export your notes one note at a time. And its importing is actually pretty good, better than you expect. Like, you can get this, Brandon. You can import Evernote.
Oh, there you go. That's
crazy.
Yeah.
And but as far as like importing, like, you know, it's still a little touch and go here. I don't know. It's a lot better than you would expect it was. But I'm thinking I'll stick with that until next Christmas when I try to use Obsidian again. And then I'll also put a link to it. But I came across someone today who also was an Obsidian to Notes person, and he came up with this. I think it's a he. They came up with this whole system for how you can make Apple Notes kind of run like an Obsidian daily note thing with templates and Apple shortcuts. Seemed like a lot of work, but it's fun reading if you're into that. Speaking of things that seem like a lot of work, you've listened to another episode of Software Defined Talk. You can get the show notes for this episode. I mentioned a few there. There's all sorts of things I didn't mention. But the things that we did talk about, we have links to them with some very minor commentary here and there. If you go to softwaredefinedtalk.com/501, and there's a great Slack channel that we mentioned, all sorts of discussion that goes on during the week that you should mention. But I think in honor of this episode number, we should button this one up.
Oh, wow.
Matt, you got to say your thing. That's how we end the show. I'm waiting for you. Go ahead, do it. Now, do it. Give us a real one that you mean it.
Bye.
All right, there you go. That'll be a good edit. There you go. I was like,
yeah, just take out the yes.
I'll cut out the.
Resign,
I can't speak. I'm waiting on you. I can tell you.
I was
blown away.
I was
speechless.
Yeah,
I was speechless.
That whole episode just for that closing.
That was fantastic. All right, Matt, you got to go. I was going to say, Coté,
I got to hop on a call. All
right, Matt, we'll see you next time. I don't know, Coté, we'll do a quick after show here. I just have one. I have one proposal for you. I want to see if you will consider it as like, have you thought about just like taking really simple notes where you just put sentence fragments in like a bullet list and that's it. That's the limited. That's all you do. You just like, because I was looking at my notes folder. It's just like kind of just random. I don't take that many notes, but like
that's how my
the format is very, very simple. It's just like basically sentence fragments and bullets.
Yeah. You know,
that's all there is. There's no other format.
That's more or less what I do. Like I don't know what's on it, so I'm not going to hold it up. But I have this little notebook here that I have on my desk, an actual notebook, and I do use it for just like a couple months ago. I started keeping my to-do list in there because maybe you don't know, but with me, like, you know, I used OmniFocus for years, and then I used reminders, and there's something that happens where after a while it just becomes a giant garbage can for things I need to do. Which is to say, like, I don't really go and like visit them very much. And so I'm kind of a fan of this. I think it's from the bullet journal lifestyle where you have a rolling to-do list. So every day you write down your to-do list, including things from yesterday, and you cross things off. And then the next day you carry those over to the next day. Right. And so like, I kind of like, I've been using that method with the notebook. Sort of, because I think it also has a nice effect of like limiting your scope, because you just can't keep track of that many things, and so therefore you don't do them. It's kind of like Conway's lawing that if you can't measure it, you can't manage. If you don't measure it, you can't manage it. Idea where it's like, well, if it's not in my to-do list, I'm not going to do it. So if I'm doing too much, I just won't have a to-do list that accommodates more than 5 things.
Right.
And so like,
but this that structure seems like it would be very notes friendly, where you just like have one, have like today's or to-do list, and then you would just go in and like delete, add, you know, like, okay.
Yeah. And so I'm kind of doing that with, so I use reminders, and I still need to like figure out how to do that. And the thing with the reminders, how it fits in this constrained thing is it's not very good at project management. Like reminders is really just a primitive grocery list thing, like just a straight up checklist of stuff, right?
Mhm.
You can't really structure it and do next actions. Like it's not built around like get things done omnifocus way of doing things. So you can't really do much with it, which means you can't track the garbage, can of to-do items. So it does
Mhm.
have that constraining thing. So yeah, I don't know, but yes, in notes, like if you really wanted to embrace this philosophy you're talking about, you could just use checklists. And at best, this is something I've always wanted to not so much do, but to be the way that I do it is you can make a smart list in notes that finds all unchecked items. And so basically, because like to the point of making it as easy as possible, instead of having a to-do list, you would just scatter to-do items across all of your notes. And when you wanted to find out what to do, you would go look at the smart list and like see what the unchecked things were, right? So imagine you're sitting in a meeting and there's like 3 to-do items that come out of it, right? Now, in a more structured thing, you'd have to open up your to-do list manager. You'd have to find the relevant project or create the relevant project, add the to-do list from it, figure out what the date was, kind of like load it in and kind of do all this project management for it, right? Versus like if you're just keeping notes, you're in the meeting note, you create like a checkbox and you're like, write Q3 report. And that's it. Right. And then whenever you're interested in like, is there something I should be working on? You go to your little smart list and you say, show me all the notes with unchecked things. And you just go through there. Now, what you can't do again, and this is almost like that batteries included, batteries not included sort of discussion is like, you can't say, show me all the unchecked things sorted by what's due today, then what's due tomorrow, so forth and so on. Right. Like it doesn't really do that.
You're really managing a lot more activities. I don't know. I guess maybe my scope is just so small. I don't know. Maybe that's something that means. It's like, yeah, like I don't know. It just seems
Well,
like
that's the other thing is like
I don't have like I just don't have like this massive scope of like many activities. Like I kind of know. Maybe that's just what I do. I guess maybe this is wrong, but I sort of like mentally I can kind of keep in my mind like what my priorities, what needs to be done, and I'll throw down some notes like occasionally, but like I don't feel like it's overwhelming to like kind of like just mentally stay on top of it. But I don't know. But
no, and I think that's exactly
right.
That's exactly like the state of mind that I think I'm actually in is what I'm doing is just overthinking it when really when I force myself to constrain down to these lists, I find that I don't screw things up. Everything's fine. Because like I didn't actually need to like track all these theoretic things that I thought would, this is what it does for me is like, I always have a lot of ideas of what I should be doing and what would be great if I did, but they actually are not what I need to do. Right. Like I even, you can't see it, but I use the label maker and I put a label here that says on the back of my camera, do only what's needed. And that will be what is necessary.
Okay.
And
I see. All right. I see. Okay. So they're like, it's more like you're like mentally kind of like, processing like it's just a mental way to like process like, hey, I'm gonna write these things down that way they're somewhere even if I don't have to do them like tomorrow or
yeah I'm kind of trying to hack my mind, whereas like I don't want to spend a lot of time on project management. I just want to like I might want to remember that I should do this or maybe I don't.
Well, there's always the end all solution is like, well, if it's really important you forget it, someone's gonna come looking for it, which maybe won't be a good feeling, but like it'll that will be your reminder when someone's like, where's this thing that's important? But a lot of times they never come back and ask for the thing. And it's just
right. Oh. And I think the other thing that a lot of people miss about the getting things done OmniFocus crazy is originally getting things done was written for busy executives who actually have tens, hundreds, thousands of things going on and teams that they need to keep track of. I mean, they have, instead of to-do lists, they have teams of people. Yeah. Right. And so to some extent, they do need project management because it would be easy to forget that like 3 meetings ago, I asked this team to go do a thing and I need to check on them. And it'd be cool if I trusted them. Well, would it be cool? Like, I kind of don't like the managers who've got like 64K of RAM in their head. and they don't really remember that they ask you to do something, right? And they're just, it's like total delegation where it just came up at the time and they ask you to go do it, and they don't really even remember to ask you if you did it. So
Well,
you're
that's a whole. I
responsible.
mean, that could be a whole other episode. Maybe we'll do it one day. It's sort of like, I don't know. We'll call it and maybe it's a little preview. I'm almost finished with the NVIDIA way. I've got a little bit left. And it's like, but I think a lot of this central, it's sort of like another example of, in case we'll use Jensen as the latest example of like, sort of like the sort of all-knowing executive, right? The company is built around that. And that kind of person, to your point, is the kind of person that has to like, because they're like consuming, like, they have 40 direct reports and they're managing 70 projects, and 70 projects have like 4,000, items that need to be done. But like if that's the way you want to manage, and if that's the way the company's consumed, I can see why you have to have a very complicated, not complicated, you have to have a very robust way to track everything. But the question I would always be asking that meeting is like, are we sure we need to be organized this way? Like, is this exactly that? But maybe that's for another day. We can talk about that at a longer length. So, all right. Well, tune in next year, because it does seem an annual topic where Coté will probably be back trying another note-taking app, which I look forward to hearing about that. But until then, I want to thank everyone for joining us on the stream for the first one this year. We should be back next week around this time. It's good to see Michael, JD, and of course, we'd like to thank everyone who watches these after the fact. And with that, we will talk to you next time.